Technical note here. In order to make capturing this footage a bit more enjoyable for myself, I'm playing using the GMDX mod, so that's what you see on screen. It's obviously not exactly how the vanilla game plays out. My notes here are based on a playthrough of the original, however, which means I'll be mentioning some things like some bugs that won't be demonstrated on screen because the mod fixes those. So, we have an intro cinematic to set up our villains and establish their basic plan. Exploit a pandemic known as the Grey Death by trading the vaccination for it in exchange for political favors and power over both the US government and the population at large. Is it too much to reveal right at the beginning? After all, it does mean there isn't really a mystery for the player. We know the plot that's being hatched right off the bat. It's just our character that doesn't. I don't think it much matters, but it is something to think about. So the setup for the first mission is this. A shipment of the Grey Death vaccine, Ambrosia, was being offloaded at Liberty Island, New York, which now houses the headquarters of a UN anti-terrorist coalition, UNATCO. An American separatist group, the National Secessionist Forces, seized the shipment and besieged the UNATCO headquarters, capturing a UNATCO agent, Gunther Herman, in the process. Rather than storm their positions, UNATCO uses the situation as a test for J.C. Denton to prove his skills, which is a clever way to justify the player having to do everything. But freeing Gunther isn't actually your objective. It's to capture the NSF commander at the top of the Statue of Liberty. You're given the choice at the beginning here of 3 starting weapons to pick from. The mini crossbow and the rifle can both be picked up in the first level. The GEP gun, on the other hand, can't be acquired until the airport mission, so really it's the best choice to take at this point, especially if you want to be able to deal with bots easily. You can try to talk to Paul twice more about, why he's no longer in Hong Kong, but he dodges the question both times. So there's obviously something going on there, something to keep in mind. Liberty Island is an odd starting mission because it's very open-ended how you approach it, but you have almost no equipment, and lacking enough skill upgrades at this point, you still can't aim for shit, so fighting your way through it is a bit difficult. It's a weird difficulty spike because the subsequent 2 levels, Battery Park and Hell's Kitchen, are much easier areas than Liberty Island. There's not a lot of cover, but it doesn't really matter since the AI is half blind anyway. Worth noting, there's a couple of crates with medbots locked inside around the island, but they're really easy to miss, and to be honest, it's not really worth the lockpicks. The situation is hardly realistic at the UNATCO HQ. You've got only 2 guys guarding the compound. If this is the headquarters, there should be many, many more troops here. The helicopter that's on the landing pad even just flies off instead of providing air support. Like, what the hell? And all these guys have pistols. Yeah, I know, it's the starting area. They're not supposed to have any powerful weapons that you can pick up, but this is the HQ. These guys should be very heavily armed. Anyway, the guy at the gate is Kaplan. He's a hot-headed and self-serving kind of guy who sells off battlefield loot instead of just turning it into the armory like a disciplined soldier would. You'll later see from Carter that this sort of behavior is mostly ignored, so we have our first clue, outside of the intro, that UNATCO is not as dedicated to due process and procedure as it claims. Now, what's a bit absurd is Kaplan being able to get away with this in front of a ranking agent. JC should be able to just order Kaplan to hand over his spoils, but alas, the player can never actually exercise their theoretical authority over the troops. He does serve a gameplay function, though. He lets you buy some ammo to get you started, since dead enemies only drop a couple rounds each. If you pick the right dialogue option, he also gives you the famous ComVan key code, 0451, which is a Fahrenheit 451 reference. Your other secondary objective, other than freeing Gunther, is to get the key to the statue doors from an informant on the dock. Why UNATCO wouldn't have such a key, I have no idea. On your way there, you'll note a bot patrolling next to the ramp down to the dock. Why it's there, I'm not really sure, other than you can use it to kill enemies by baiting them into following you towards it. But it also poses a rather odd conundrum. If this thing was always here, how the hell did the NSF ever get off the dock? It would have seen them. Anyway, you go down to the dock and you meet Harley Philbin, which is another self-serving, money-grubbing minion of UNATCO, just like Kaplan, though Philbin's loyalties are immediately suspect, as he seems to have sympathy for the NSF and won't give you the key to the doors if you don't guarantee not to kill the commander. He gets offended at you not doing so, even though JC rightly points out that
I don't see anyone waving a white flag.
Again, JC is supposed to have authority here, and the US is a police state, so he should be able to simply order Philbin to give him the key anyway, but he doesn't. Although the key doesn't even really matter, because there's a conspicuous data cube lying around telling you the password to the security system, which you can use to open the door. And because it lets you do that, there's also very little reason to go in the back door up the crate stacks, unless you really don't feel like taking out the guys on the ground floor, who aren't that difficult to deal with. This level also starts the painfully stupid trend that continues throughout the entire game of having people leave their PIN numbers on data cubes so that you can steal their money without having to have any points in hacking. No one would ever do that, of course. It also introduces the PS-20, whose existence in the game I am still baffled by. It's a single-shot plasma gun that is extremely loud and isn't even a reliable insta-kill, and will damage you if you're too close to its impact. It's utterly useless. It has no purpose in the game whatsoever. Also note that if you hack a terminal, cameras can't see you anymore. It's like you disappear, which you can exploit to open Gunther's cell without having to use a multi-tool on the camera looking at it first. If you don't feel like giving Gunther a gun, he gets noticeably emotional and irrational, at least in the text. The voice acting obviously doesn't convey it properly. He clearly feels challenged by you and your new kind of AUGs, like he's obsolete. The NSF commander, Leo Gold, sets the game's conspiratorial tone and ties it in with existing conspiracies that were popular in the 90s. He believes that the plague is intentionally being used to limit population growth, and that the president is a puppet of the Rockefellers and the Rothschilds via the Trilateral Commission. There's a bunch of big conspiracy names dropped there. He also informs us of the surprising fact that corporations in the world of Deus Ex only pay 5% of all U.S. taxes.
You can't fight ideas with bullets.
Now, my playthrough of the level didn't take me there, but there's also a conversation you can overhear where two NSF talk about Gunther and how dehumanizing being a cyborg is. To quote one of them, "If that's how you judge a man, by performance, then suddenly it's not about people, but upgrades, versions, functionality." Obviously the voice acting is horrific, so you'll probably be distracted, but the meaning there is it makes both an in-universe comment on how augmented people are seen as tools for those in power, including, you, the player, but also it doubles as a real warning about how exploitable cybernetics could make people in the future, in reality. Finally, back at UNATCO, JC remarks to Paul that he didn't know UNATCO handled ambrosia distribution, combined with Simon's comment that he has someone in place at the organization from the intro cutscene, and the savvy player can, even this early in the game, piece together that we are, in fact, directly working for the villains.